Hey, Jake Shields here. Got my guest today, Solomon. We met a few times, hung out. We became aware of you, I guess, after October 7th. I think we had very, at least on the Palestine issue, very similar views. So we were came in touch with them. We hung out Nick's event, a few times. So thanks for coming.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so just real quick, though, I don't really know. I mean, like I said, we met a few times, but it's always been other people. So I don't know too much about your history other than when I seen you blow up on Twitter. So first off, what were you doing? What kind of work were you in and stuff before you were on Twitter?
Yeah, so my background is a bit nerdy. It's an academic background. So my original degree was in law. Then I converted that and became a mathematics teacher.
Wow.
I then have an MA in philosophy and then was doing my PhD in philosophy. So I've written like a number of academic papers, both on philosophy, theology, religion, culture issues. I wrote about population collapse maybe like 10 years ago. So I wrote about, I've done a significant amount of writing. So that was my original background in terms of academia. I also ran a school for like 10 years, which was again in a very deprived area in the UK, like socially, economically deprived, trying to give back. And my aim when I had that school was actually to try and create thinkers that can represent the Muslim populace, because I always felt, in my view, that they weren't being represented well enough, and therefore they were, in the media, always being considered the villain or being presented as the bad guy. And we didn't have anybody who had this kind of like political outlook to be able to push back on it. So through that school, I was attempting to create individuals that would be able to do so. But then I ended up blowing up myself.
Yeah.
And so I was able to do it myself. So then I gave up that school just before I came onto Twitter. And then I blew up on Twitter. I've only been on it for like a year and a half. How I blew up on Twitter, which I guess is going to be your next question, is...
Yeah. Well, I think first I would say it's awesome to work with the schools. I think working with kids and getting them young and teaching them how to think. I think a lot of the current schools, they don't really teach you how to think. It's just 100%. Kind of a robots. I didn't really learn much in school. So I think that's the kind of... that's very important work to do.
I completely agree. Like if you look at the educational system throughout the world, not just the West, it's completely rote learning. So it means just memory, memorizing. There's no critical thinking. And one of the things that I did do in the school was we did have like specific critical thinking lessons. So as an example, at that time, COVID was happening. So I was making the students, not telling them what to believe, because obviously you're like,
yeah, exactly.
But I was like, guess what? You're saying this is about COVID, but what about these ideas? What about these thoughts? What about the fact that you need to, there need to be certain methodological processes when you create lockdowns, the efficacy of it, and so on and so forth. So like I used to make them do that, where it was a wide range of topics, whether it was COVID, whether it was Russia and Ukraine, whether it was Winston Churchill, whatever it was, I always tried to make them analyze it from both aspects to create the critical
and open up like debates about it.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of that theory. I think parents should do it with their kids, like in a very obvious, let your kid challenge you back, but in a very like friendly manner, not like a disrespectful way, but like let your kid ideas and let them think back and like, well, what's your opinion on it? How do you think? And it teaches the mind to process instead of telling the kid what to think. And I think it's what we need to do, teach people how to think, not what to think.
I completely agree with you. I think the main problem we have with the population is they follow. And the reason they follow is because they're used to just appealing to authority. So someone higher than them tells them something, they'll immediately appeal to it. And that doesn't matter if it's politics, religion, life, whatever it is. So what you're saying is completely
I think as a parent, it's hard to like understand that. But there's been a few times, debate my daughter, and I'm like, oh wow, she was right. And it's like, it's hard to admit, like, okay, I think you might be right here, but sometimes as a parent, I think that's the best thing to do. Instead of be like, you're wrong, when you're teaching them to think for herself, they come up with a great point. It's like, okay, you just made a great point.
I agree 100%. That literally will flourish, allow a child to flourish. And once you're basically imparting that type of knowledge at a young age, all they're going to be doing is developing that mind a lot more better at a lot earlier age. So she'll be a lot more advanced than at the average age.
Yeah, that's to teach people to always challenge things, including me, which that's a hard one to say. It's like, don't trust anything, including me, but it's like always question everything. And that's what you need to do.
That's literally my rule in life now. Like anytime I see everybody saying one thing, I automatically assume it's going to be wrong. And then I look into it, because you just can't trust anything now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's like that. It's always trying to figure out what's true, what's not. There's agendas behind it. Like everything's, you should always question everything. Let's go back to Twitter. So yeah, how did you first blow up?
So initially, I started, my account was really old, but I never used it. So I was like one of those people who had an account but never used it. And then I started using it in January 2023, the last couple of days of December 2022. And that was because the Tates got arrested. And when I saw the Tates got arrested, I saw the entirety of social media attacking them. That was an example of what you just said now. So I was like, wait a sec. And because I wasn't like one of these people who was a Tate fan or anything like that. So I was like, wait a second. Everybody's attacking these individuals. then there's likely the truth is likely gonna be on the other side. So let me look into it. And so when I looked into it, I looked at that the evidence was quite weak, the information was quite weak, and so then I started pushing back on a lot of the people who were attacking Tate. And that's actually how I blew up. So I got like 100,000 followers very quickly.
Wow.
And it was through like basically initially the Tate stuff. And then I went to, so initially I was debunking anyone on the Tate stuff, both on my page as well as Twitter Spaces. And then after that, I was in the United States and a source came to me because I was investigating the issue, who literally gave me some information about the women who were making these claims about the Tates. And then I investigated, and a lot of the information that came out of the United States about the woman from the United States came from me, because I investigated it. It all blew up. I saw her past, how she'd accused many men in the past of the same thing.
Yeah, I'm reading that. That's crazy.
A lot of that was from me. So
Yeah,
in terms of in terms of like, for example, there was a guy she was with who also committed suicide. I found that out, and then now if you look at it, the Tates are suing them for defamation in Florida, and a lot of that research was from me.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've known the Tates before they really got big. So for me, I'm a little biased, but I still, by looking at the evidence, the same thing. They definitely looked 100% innocent. I don't agree with everything they did with the cams. You know, it's not the most moral thing, but I don't think it's anything illegal. So it's so for me, I always stood with them. And yeah, the evidence is just not strong. Like you said, you look at I think most of the girls actually did statements saying, no, they did not take advantage of us. This is false. Out of there's like 35 witnesses or something, and majority of them are saying no. And the couple that are, like they said, they have histories of making false accusations. So the whole case is so weak, and they've been holding them there and going on close to 2 years now when they can't leave Romania.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I agree with you. There was a couple of women who came out and said literally they've basically said that we are victims, but we're not victims. And we literally support the Tates. And then women, the psychologists who said that they're victims and never met them, never did a psychoanalysis in person, made that judgment just without ever seeing them. So again, a lot of the things in the case didn't really add up. And as you said, the two women who are basically the main individuals in the case, they have significant problems in their claims and as well as their pasts.
Yeah, I think they pissed off the wrong person, rather it be people in the CIA or someone in Romania. But to me, it seems like they just pissed the wrong person off and they're going after him, trying to keep him in jail.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that was evident. I think when the second time they've got arrested recently, I think the realization came to Andrew Tate that maybe these guys are not going to let us go.
Yeah, and it was interesting. He got arrested. I'm sure you will. Right after they were talking about he always says the Matrix, and he goes, Israel controls the Matrix. And 24 hours later or something, he was raided a second time.
Exactly. Well, there was that major space, wasn't there, with Dan Bilzerian, Andrew Tate, and Candace Owen, where they basically start talking about the Zionist power. They exposed it, and he did say in that space that, look, controls the Matrix, because everyone was like, oh, he's talking about this Matrix. What does it mean? Does it mean the deep state? Who does it mean? Well, he was like, oh, finally, control the Matrix. And yeah, within a very short period of time, he got arrested. And he said that one of the people from DCOT who came to the house said, oh, who have you pissed off?
So that's probably the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's unfortunate if it is. Yeah, and then after that, you really, what I started, I probably saw you from your Andrew Tate tweets, actually, because I was, following him. So I'm sure I've seen you then. Yeah. But I really became aware of you after October 7th, which is an issue we're strongly aligned with. Something just, it's absolutely brutal what Israel is doing over there. It's just, it's hard even. You're obviously on the Telegram channels, too. It gets to the point where it's hard, hard looking through them. Just seeing all the kids they kill, the massacres, just the brutalness of it. And it's, the accounts blew up, but it's a crappy way to have blown up. It sucks that, people need to speak up, but I just feel it's one of those tough issues. For me, I think October 7th, I lost about 10,000 followers that day, but I knew I was speaking truth. And, eventually I gained obviously a lot more followers back. Not that that's why I tweet. I always care about what I think is true. But my fan base was all super gung-ho, pro-Israel, so they weren't happy. But having been in Israel, I'd kind of seen some things were off. I tried going to the West Bank to visit a friend. They wouldn't let me go there. I knew something was off, so I'd done a dive into the history before. But I was unaware how much control over America they had. Once that started happening, our politicians just kept giving them weapons. All of our politicians just kept saying anything for Israel. I was part of, what I thought was they claimed to be the anti-war free speech right. Those guys run in to give Israel more money for weapons. It was like, wow, it's the whole system's corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. So even before October the 7th, I did a few spaces on it. I think I brought Ryan Dawson on, and we did one on 9/11. They tried to cancel me over that. Then we had, remember, the Ban the ADL, I think you were part of that as well.
Yeah.
Just before October the 7th, with Keith Woods and many of the people who were part of the Ban the ADL crew. And what happened there was, again, they basically tried to censor, they tried to attack, but then they were starting to get exposed. And October the 7th was kind of like a major watershed moment. And I think you can attest to this as well. When we decided to speak the truth, I thought there's a very high likelihood account's going to get banned. I
Yeah.
thought my account's going to get banned. I actually thought that we're going to be on the minority, that the vast majority of people are going to be on the Israel
I
side.
think we were initially, I think, but then
Yeah.
it started switching over. Or at least on my page, I got a lot of hate initially, then it
Yeah.
slowly started switching.
Yeah, and for me, I was shocked. Like, as soon as I started speaking up, the amount of support was unbelievable. So, like, anyone who thinks that you went on that side thinking you're going to get a huge following, it
No,
wasn't the
no,
case.
exactly.
I actually thought we're going to get a huge amount of attack. We might lose our page, but it's just this is one of them moments you got to speak the truth. I even gave up like a huge contract because at that time I had like a very lucrative 8-figure contract. And I was just appalled at like, what was going on. And I gave that up because I wanted to like, I thought, you know what, this is probably one of the few things in life that you have to like speak for the truth, speak for what's going on, speak for justice, and like be willing to give up everything. And I think a lot of us very early on who did that. Afterwards, there's people who came afterwards.
Yeah.
It's a different story. It's a lot easier. You create the pathway for them. But for us, when we created that pathway, when we were able to allow people to create an atmosphere where people could speak against Zionism, I think that was huge. That was monumental, and I think that was a huge impact.
Yeah, no, it was tough in the beginning. I got a lot of hate from my following. I thought I was going to lose a lot of financial opportunities. Surprisingly, I've only lost one or two small things. Luckily, most people I work with have been supportive, including a couple of Jews I work with. They've been very understanding. I know a lot of people have not had the same kind of luck I have, though.
Yeah.
I know people that have lost a lot of money for speaking up, and it's tough. But I think truth is so much more important.
100%, because look, you're only in this world for a very finite amount of time, and at the end of the day, the fruits that you live in this world, whatever you do in this world, is the most important thing. Because in reality, like, money comes and goes, and I'm not saying you shouldn't aspire for money,
Yeah.
but these things come and go, right? But in reality, like, what you look back on is like, did I do the right thing at the right time? And I think we definitely did.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think it's super important to speak up. People stay quiet, but it's like, I can't live with cowardice. And everyone close to me was being like, oh, don't speak up, let someone else do it. But I'm like, who? Who else is doing it? No one else is doing it. A few people were, but we need more. And I think truth is way more important.
100%. And when you look back on it, the level of impact that we had, like, if you think about, as you said, the Zionists, the level of control they have over the media, over the US government, over the UK government, over Western civilization, and the fact that, remember, they were doing massacres in the past. You look at Kasled, you look at what they did at Al-Shifa Hospital previously. They were doing these massacres, not to the same level, but they were doing these massacres in the past, and it was never highlighted. What was different this time is we had Twitter, where we were able to highlight this. But in addition to that, I think some of our voices, in the way that we did it, in the kind of smart way that we did it, we articulated, first of all, the genocide that was going on in Gaza, the ethnic cleansing that was going on in Gaza, also the control they have over the US government in terms of the control through AIPAC, the fact that basically throughout many of these years, we saw the US being the moral police of society, and yet they were basically supporting this specific genocide. I think all of this exposing that we did in a very smart, astute manner had a huge impact.
Yeah, and I think also that's we got to give Elon Musk a little credit for allowing us on there, because Twitter has changed things. It's like a global brain where we can go out and make change so fast. People don't realize like how much of an impact you can make because things just go viral. You don't even have to be like, you were just some guy teaching a school, and look the impact you've had. So people realize that a regular person can have impact now. Before we couldn't, but it allows us, I was just some fighter, but I can have impact now. Before we never had those opportunities because we have our own, it's like our own news channel. And like same thing, now I'm going into podcasts, same with you. It shows you that a regular person can make a difference. So some people think they can't make a difference, they can. It is frustrating though, because I think we've definitely changed the public opinion, but we haven't really changed the government end yet. And I think that's something we've been brainstorming, trying to come to ways with that. But that's really, we still have a long ways to go, unfortunately. I think it's going to be a long fight, but we've done the first step of waking people up, which is, that's a very important thing. And now it's a lot safer for other people to speak up. And if you have a big voice now and you're not speaking up and you believe it's the right thing, you're kind of a coward.
I completely agree with you, and it shows a lack of integrity. But also, in terms of changing the hearts and minds of the average person, that was hard in itself. The fact that we were able to do it shows the monumental impact that we achieved. And I'm very, very proud of what we did. And as you said, the next step is to change it on a higher level. The problem with the changing on a higher level is the level of control they have over the media, the level of control they have over the government. But I do believe that, a lot of times we have these discussions behind closed doors, that I do believe that we can make that impact, we can make that difference. It's going to take a process, it's going to take hard work, it's going to take effort, it's going to take people from a wide range of beliefs and thoughts come together to do it.
No, I fully agree. I wouldn't be speaking up. I don't think we make a difference, but I do think it's going to be a long process. It's not going to be overnight. It's unfortunate, but we have to change things. We can't let another foreign country control America, and they need to give the Palestinians some freedom, a real two-state solution.
Yeah, I'm more for a one-state solution.
Yeah.
Because I think that what's going to happen with a two-state solution is you're going to have the same scenario
Mm-hmm.
where you'll have a Palestinian state, which is similar to Gaza, where they will have no military,
Nothing, yeah.
air force, any kind of way to basically stop any attacks against them. There'll be, again, control what goes in, goes out. So, essentially, a two-state solution is going to be something which is a facade. I think a one-state solution is something that is equal to American values, democratic Western values, which is that all man is equal, irrespective of race, religion, or creed. Every man is equal, and therefore, if you have that in Palestine, or what they call Israel now, if you have that in that region, then I think that is what is a Western.
That would be ideal, but I don't really. Do you think they could really? I don't see those people going and living, and they think they're better than the Palestinians, but not all of them. But a lot of them clearly think they're better and don't look at them as human. It's hard seeing them going along with that. It would have to be completely forced by America.
Yeah, they definitely believe in this kind of supremacy. Both it comes from innately that they think they're better than everybody else, and also there is, like, obviously textually, some of them believe it based on textual ideologies that come from, like, the Talmud and so on and so forth. So definitely they believe in the supremacy. The issue is, I agree with you, they won't. But in reality, this is it, because Netanyahu said it. He said, I do not want a two-state solution. Israelis have said they don't want to.
Yeah.
So in reality, what they want, they don't want a two-state solution. As you said, they don't want a one-state solution. They want the entire land, and that's why they're doing that.
Yeah, and you know about it. You see how little land they have now. If you do the math, they just crush it down to nothing. The Gaza is a tiny little strip. West Bank is these tiny little isolated areas. The settlers are going in there. They call them settlers. They're really terrorists.
Yeah.
They're going in there, taking people's homes, attacking them, harassing them. That's why I don't understand how, a lot of the American patriots are always like, I would take my guns and defend my country and my family. But these same people are saying the Palestinians don't have a right to defend themselves and call them terrorists. It just shows how much brainwashing they've done.
Exactly. It's been brainwashing over a long period of time. And so therefore, but if you look at it, the people are waking up, and you see, like, certain things they try to do is like manipulation. So initially they tried to make it into like and recently you saw it with the college protest, they tried to make it into a right versus left thing. So then they basically make the right believe that, look, it's a leftist idea to basically be pro-Palestine. And again, they try to achieve it a bit, but obviously there are people who are dissidents, such as yourself, such as Nick Fuentes, such as many others on the right who are basically like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, no, I think I'm supposed to be, this pro-Israel, but I just didn't. So it caused me, like I said, initially lose a lot of followers, but I didn't care because I always speak what I think is true, and I just don't, I think it was terrible what they were doing. I think one thing that's been a little harmful is there's an element of the left here that's pretty deranged, like when they're out burning American flags and stuff. They could be plants though, but that is definitely not a good look, and that gives it people on the right look over and they're like, oh, well, these aren't our people, so it makes them think they're wrong about Palestine, but Palestine's an issue they actually have 100% right.
So first of all, there's two aspects to this, right? And I know it's going to be controversial. So the first aspect, I agree with you. Like, if you're thinking about it from a logical, smart perspective, optics perspective, it's not a smart thing to do, because all it does is radicalize people on the right to be against you if you're burning a flag. It's like, it doesn't achieve anything, and all it does is give them, the media, an excuse to manipulate the right into saying, look at these lefties, or look at these people, they don't love America. So I agree with you. But in the grandest scheme of things, like, look, like, burning a flag isn't as bad as a genocide.
I 100% agree. I mean, I think it's America, our First Amendment right gives us the right to burn a flag. But I also personally love my country well, and I understand why people are mad at us. It's like we've done a lot of shitty stuff, but ultimately I think it's still not a smart thing. But I think we should be able to burn flags, which is weird when people are getting charged for a hate crime for burning like a gay flag, but we can burn an American flag.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's why America is great, because we can burn our flag. So it's like, I agree.
Like the level of free speech you have in this country, the level of freedom you have in this country, I think it's hard to explain to anybody else, because in reality, like, many of us I'm from the UK, we have significant amount of like control on speech. Europe's even much worse. And when you look at the US and you look at the freedoms that people have, it is just unbelievable and something that should be cherished. And again, this is another example of the Zionists who are trying to stop speech. They're doing it in the UK, and they're also trying to do it in the US through various policies. You saw one of those policies that they tried to put through Congress, where speaking out against Israel, speaking out against even certain religious ideals, speaking out against the genocide, all of these things they were trying to make illegal. So they are attempting to basically destroy the First Amendment, even in the US, to control speech.
Yeah, I think our Constitution is absolutely brilliant. The guys that wrote it, and the First Amendment, Second Amendment, they're so crucial. And I've been watching some of the stuff going on in England with people getting arrested for like Facebook posts and stuff, and it's insane. I think it's so important. People need to cherish it, and they are trying to take it away here. You're 100% right. And I think it's obviously some of the issues going on are complex in England. Maybe get into that later, some of the immigration stuff, but But people should not be arrested over their. I think we both agree people should not be arrested over their posts.
I'm a big believer that people should be literally allowed to say anything. I believe in complete free speech. Now, I know people don't dislike me saying that, but in reality, the reason for it is because I believe that our ideas are strong. And I believe that in a free market of ideas, like, we'll be able to out defeat the other person's position. We'll be able to expose the fallacies in their ideals. And therefore, that's the best way to propagate our position. I'm completely for free speech because I always believe that, look, what is the reason we were able to expose, first of all, the Zionist lies, but also a part of what I do is to try and demonstrate that actually this demonization of Islam has been perpetuated by the Zionists. And again, the free speech that I'm allowed to use to do that has benefited, again, my community in terms of Muslims as well. So I'm completely for free speech.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that as well. I think we should be able to say anything other than like a threat and doxing. You should be able to discuss all ideas. If an idea is bad, it'll get defeated.
Exactly.
You know, I think it's so important to sit down and have talks. And I like to talk to people I disagree with too. And sometimes you realize you don't disagree that much when you actually like talk face to face, like, you know, civilized, not trying to yell at each other. You'll realize maybe you're only slightly off and you thought you were way off.
I agree completely. And even if you're like way off on ideals, I think it's always good to hear a different perspective and different thought. I've changed my opinion on a number of things over time.
Yeah, same.
Because like either you're arrogant, and actually if you're arrogant in your thoughts, you're not a smart person because it means you're not very confident. If you're willing to say, look, my ideas are these, but then, okay, actually you made a good point here. Let me incorporate that into my framework. Or you made a good point here. Let me incorporate that framework. It doesn't mean like just giving up your ideals, but it's incorporating something which is logical and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, 100% agree. The same thing kind of goes into fighting. Sometimes guys think they know everything and they stop getting better, but maybe they're doing something good and there can be a slightly different variation. So it's like things are always changing, evolving. You should be looking like that with anything, with your political ideas, you know, your sports. Everything's always changing and can get better. And you have to sometimes be like, oh, I found a better way to do it, or oh, I didn't think of it this perspective. Maybe I was wrong.
That makes so much sense what you just said. Like what you and I never thought about this before, but you're right. Like fighting is a good example of this.
Things are changing. Yeah.
MMA is a brilliant example of this because you have like a certain way that you fight, and then you'll incorporate, like for example, punching into it. You'll incorporate like MMA into it. You'll incorporate like certain moves into it, which again, previously maybe people didn't do it. It evolves a lot, right? Like
exactly, things are evolving. So the top guys are sometimes they're doing stuff totally different. Like some of the best guys, like, you know, like guys like John Donaher is considered like one of the best jiu-jitsu coaches, and Gordon Ryan. They'll come in, they had a move mastered, and the next year they're doing it totally different. And it's because, oh, I found a better way to do it. There's better ways to adjust and do things sometimes. And if you have too much ego, some of these guys will hold their ego. They're like, oh, I already know how to do this. I'm already an expert in fighting, so I know it all. No, this is the way to do it. Instead of being like, maybe I should rethink this.
I think it's a perfect analogy, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I think everything in life, you just stay open-minded. And you're also, I mean, I think both of us, we reach across and communicate in different groups. Not a lot of people do that. You know, I can hang out with liberals, conservatives, black nationalists, white nationalists. I think it was really interesting that you kind of came through with Nick Fuentes' thing, completely unexpected, and made that Christian-Muslim alliance. I think that's really cool that you and Nick both did that. Both of you guys got some backlash for it, I'm sure, but it's really important that Christians and Muslims realize the religions are very similar.
I agree. And look, I like Nick a lot. I think he's a very, very smart guy. And to me, I obviously like smart people because, you know, you can basically bounce off ideas, thoughts. And I believe that the Christian and Muslim alliance is important and imperative. But look, this is what is an alliance? An alliance is that you're not the same. So you have different views on certain things, but you align on certain aspects. That's the whole idea. So when people start crying and say, look, you don't have the exact same view on this, or you don't have the exact same view on that, that shows a lack of understanding of what an alliance is. And what the importance of, for me, of the Muslim-Christian alliance is that we disagree on certain things, we agree on certain things, but what we do vehemently agree is that the biggest problem is the Zionist control of both the United States and the impact it's having on foreign nations in terms of the destruction they're causing in the Middle East, the ethnic cleansing they're doing in Palestine, what they're doing in the UK in terms of our government, the control they have. And I think, as you said, the Christian-Muslim alliance is very important for that regard, because if you look at Christianity and Islam, it is very similar on a number of ideals. The first, or one of the prime examples is, for example, the respect of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Both believe that Jesus is, both respect Jesus. Muslims believe that Jesus is divinely inspired. Christians believe that Jesus is divine. But in reality, if you look at the ethics, you know, the anti, for example, being against LGBTQ, being against feminism, being against a lot of these ideals, that I believe a lot of these ideas, especially feminism, is the complete destruction of society. That is something that is a huge conformity in those ideals. And therefore, it is important that we do work together in that regard. And so therefore, yeah, I have a huge amount of respect for Nick.
Yeah, I think the religions, they're so much similar when I think they're not. But have you gotten a lot of hate for working with Nick or not really?
Yes, I got a huge amount of hate for working with Nick. I got a huge amount of hate for basically even promoting yourself.
Yeah.
And even people who turned on me afterwards, I've got a huge amount of hate for basically platforming them early on. But I think it was important because when it comes to the issue of Palestine, seeing this kind of if it was just Muslims speaking out against Palestine, it wouldn't have had the same level of impact. It was actually a people from a wide range of backgrounds, especially Americans, who were speaking out against the genocide that I think had a huge impact. So I think the alliance was very important. And going forward, if just, for example, Nick's crew spoke out against it, people would just be like, these Nazi white nationalists are speaking out against it. And if it was just us, they'd be like, oh, these Muslims hate Jews, that's why they're speaking out against it. The fact that everybody is coming together to speak out against it, I think that has a huge monumental impact. So yeah, I did have a huge amount of backlash for that. And I know Nick had a lot of backlash for it as well.
I know he got a little hate for bringing you there. But for me, I felt what you just said, I felt like there had to be some white people speaking out against it. I think Muslims have been for years, and everyone just too easy to brush them off. It's like, oh, it's Muslims. The Muslims and Jews don't like each other for whatever reason, but they never ask why. Everyone just be like, oh, Muslims and Jews like clash. But when white people start pointing it out, as crappy as that is, people start being like, oh, why is he saying that? And at first it's like, oh, screw this guy. But then if they keep posting stuff, I know I've won a lot of people over from my DMs. People that were telling me they hated me. People, later DM me like, oh, sorry, I was wrong. People in person being like, oh, you won me over. So I do know I'm making an impact. So despite, maybe costing me some money, I knew it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think that's the importance of the alliance. And like, for example, alliance isn't just Muslims and Christians. It's Muslims and Christians is the main part of the alliance, but also like people, like-minded people.
Yeah.
Like, for example, yourself, I think I'm not sure if you're like, for example, you're part of it. You're a monumental part of it. There's so many people who are a monumental part of the alliance to speak out against the Zionist power is just important. People, as you said, people from the left, people from the right. And I actually do
They come together, right and left, and come together on this issue,
I have a very good relationship with people who are considered white nationalists, people who are considered black nationalists, people who are liberal, people who are conservative. Like, a wide range of people come together literally helps out against the power that these people have.
Yeah, and Jews are more than welcome too. I know some guys can get a little bit like, oh, we don't need Jews leading our movement. Maybe not moving, but there's guys like Dave Smith's brilliant. There's a bunch of Jews that are strongly against it as well too.
Yeah, look, with Dave Smith, his work for Palestine is completely commendable. I really respect him a lot. I really value the work that he's done, and many other Jewish people have done a significant amount of good work. For example, Aramate, people from the Grey Zone. There's so many people who've done so much good work. Where I disagreed a bit with Dave Smith, I know Nick also disagreed with him.
I know they were getting into it,
Yeah, but where I disagreed with Dave Smith a bit was there was like a debate between him and Laura Loomer. So it was like Dave Smith, Jewish guy supporting pro-Palestine, Laura Loomer, Zionist, Jewish person, anti-Palestine. And then the moderator was that Andrew Sosniak, or whatever his name is, the guy from PBD. Again, a Jewish guy who's a Zionist.
That's ridiculous,
So, and what they were doing was, like, he was pro-Palestine, which was really good. He's making good arguments. But then she was like, she didn't even care about the Palestine issue. She was just attacking Islam. And he was like, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Islam is a problem. And I was just getting so frustrated. I was like, wait, so why is this guy representing this position? It should be somebody who can also back up the Palestinian cause and say, actually, this propaganda you're doing against Muslims is highly problematic. And so I think it's a self-defeating because, like, people complain to me about, like, for example, you always mention the word Islamophobia, right? And they're like, oh, why do you mention this word Islamophobia? There's no such thing. But there is such thing as Islamophobia, right? Because if you look at the Islamophobia industry, both in the UK and the US, but especially in the UK, there's a number of academic literature. I've done exposés on it. Professor David Miller's done exposés on it, where actually the Zionists, through various NGOs, political bodies, created this entire industry where they basically try to demonize Muslims intentionally. So this entire industry of making Muslim look like a bad guy was something they did. So even if you look at it in October the 7th, they always tried to go back to that. But this time it didn't work. People were like, no, we don't agree with you on this. So this entire industry was created by them. So it definitely exists. And so therefore to say that there is no such thing as Islamophobia is actually perpetuating Zionist propaganda.
Yeah, when I growing up, there was lots of anti-Islam stuff, and it became like normalized, especially after 9/11.
Exactly.
So it became like just completely normal, just like hate on Muslims and call them terrorists. And I didn't know very many Muslims growing up. I was never really anti-Islam, but maybe a little bit, just because that's what's fed through you through like the media, through people are always just saying things. I think I read a couple books by like Sam Harris, who completely vilifies Islam. Later, I found out he left one religion out, and I realized like, oh, because he's part of the tribe.
Exactly.
He just bashes Christianity and Islam the whole time.
Exactly.
So read that like, oh, okay, these people are a problem, and you see these terrorist attacks highlighted, and maybe some of the terrorist attacks are real. Some of them could be like false flags as well. But there's also I mean, these terrorists are obviously horrible, but then you got to look a little deeper that maybe there's some reasons why these people's families were killed. So it's not as black and white.
Well, it's first of all, you're 100% right. So let's talk about that point there, and then I'll come back to like the industry. So in reality, what happened is, like, of course, you have Muslims who are mental, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, there's
right?
crazy people from every
there's
group.
crazy people from every group. Like, I ain't gonna be like, these people are perfect.
No, of course
Like,
there's-
if you
yeah,
look
it's
at my
a billion of
writing,
them, yeah.
if you look at my writings, I actually expose these people for
Yeah.
that, right? So, of course, you have that, and then you have certain ideologies, very minor sects within Islam, who maybe are extreme as well. But look, you have people who commit terrorist attacks, and they are mental, right? But similarly, the only difference is you have people from all backgrounds doing it. The only difference is that when a Muslim does it, the word terrorist is attached. But for example, if someone does a school shooting, or if someone who isn't a Muslim does an attack, they just don't label it terrorist. So whenever I look in the media and there's an attack that's occurred, I just look at the headline. If they say it's a terrorist, I'm like, oh, it's a Muslim. If it's the exact same
Yeah.
attack and it's not a Muslim, they just don't use the word terrorist. So again, this word has almost been created mainly for Muslims. Now they've started using it a lot more for like white nationalists as well, and they've incorporated them into it. But generally speaking, it's mainly used for Muslims. So that's the first thing that I think that's important to talk about. Sorry.
No, that's an excellent point when you said that. Like, wow, that's true, because there could be shootings, but they don't call them terrorists if it's like a white person, or if the white nationalists, they will.
Yeah.
Also, the FBI, they weaponized against Muslims. They'd be setting these. I was reading some old research on it. They'd be setting these Muslims up, and basically it'd be like some guy who's like Down syndrome, or not quite Down syndrome, but borderline.
Yeah,
no
mental
friends.
illness, yeah.
They would talk him into doing like a terrorist attack. Then they'd arrest him and act like they did it at a raid. And recently they've done the same thing in the U.S. with like the Whitner kidnapping. It was a governor. They staged this giant kidnapping with a bunch of like white nationalists or Trump supporters, but the whole thing was an FBI plot to get a couple of dumb guys to go along with it. And they were trying to feed them the weapons. They've done the same thing with January 6th. So now you see the FBI treating Trump supporters the way they used to treat Muslims. I think it's been a kind of a wake-up call for me and some other people.
Well, 100%. So like the Pulse massacre in the US was a good example of that, where they said it was a Muslim terrorist attack, and then later you find out it's like a gay guy and he had some issue.
Oh, was he gay? I didn't know that. I just thought it was the terrorist attack, because that's what.
Yeah. I
wasn't
wrote
following news that much
like
in
a very
time.
detailed article on that time, but he was actually a gay guy, and it was a gay
Wow.
club that he shot up.
Yeah,
So-
I knew that. I thought it was because he hated gays, but he was gay
was
himself.
gay
See, I didn't even
himself.
know this.
Yeah.
They never go and correct the lie they push.
Exactly. So that was an example of someone, and I believe that he did it because he got dumped, or there was some kind of issue that happened, and therefore he did a mass shooting.
Interesting.
So that was like, it was the Pulse massacre, and so that was an example where they called it terrorist attack. So again, people assume that is because he was like trying to put Muslim ideals on, but it was literally because he was gay. And so this is an example of what they do in the media intentionally to demonize Muslims. And the reason they did it is because after, as you said, in September the 11th, they created this industry because they wanted to demonize Muslims, to give them the ability to basically attack the Middle East. Because Muslims are the bad guy, let's do the illegal war in Iraq. Muslims are the bad guys, let's do this war in Afghanistan. Muslims are the bad guys, that's why we're going to attack Palestine. So it's the psychological manipulation that they try to do. So that's the reason for it. So when when you use the word Islamophobia, people are like, fear of Muslims. Well, I'm not afraid of Muslims, therefore it's not. But actually is a fear of Islam. And I'll explain to you why. Because it's not just a fear of Islam, it's also a fear of white people. And I'll explain to you, and a fear of black people. But there's also a fear of Islam. So they thought, look, the Zionists thought, look, we fear all these people. We fear black people because these people are quite strong in certain aspects and they will be able to fight against us. We fear Muslims because these people are very strong in their ideals. And we fear white people because, again, these people are very strong. They create this civilization. So they destroyed the black families through various policies in the United States. So if you look at it, for example, through through the music industry, through the Hollywood industry, they did it through housing policies. They incentivized black women to
not to get married,
exactly,
right? So
or
there's
divorce.
no father at home.
And
That's
so they have
probably the
fatherless
biggest
homes.
issue, yeah.
So, and they basically feminized the black man in the 80s and 70s. You look at a lot of the movies, they put black men in dresses.
In dresses, yeah.
Exactly.
I remember an actor saying that. I forget who it was. A black
Eddie
actor
Murphy.
said that, and I
Eddie
started.
Murphy said it.
Yeah, and I started noticing after. I'm like, wow, they're always putting these black men in dresses.
Exactly.
I think someone else said they tried to put it. I think it was Chappelle said they tried to make him wear a dress too, or something.
Exactly.
Someone said it. I think it was Chappelle.
It was Eddie Murphy and David Chappelle
Yeah.
are like one of the bigger ones who I like a lot, who talk about
But
these
once you
issues.
notice it, you're like, wow, they're always feminizing these black men. Now you see guys walking around like, I can't remember this basketball player with his tranny kids, and he's dressing like a woman, and like all these guys doing it, going along with it.
100%. So that's how they destroyed the black community. And then they did the same thing to the white community, right? So now if you look at it, they'd perpetuated feminism in an extreme manner. They made sure that basically women weren't getting with men to have children. They basically, again, feminized the man. If you look at, again, the movie industry now, there's rarely a couple who's a white male and a white female. It's always never the case, again, to again cause the destruction of the white populace, because again, they fear the white man. So again, it's white phobia, because they fear it. And similarly, they fear Islam for the exact same reason that we've already explained. It's Islamophobia. So it is actually fear. And so when people say it's not phobia, it actually is, because in reality, what happened? So what happened was the Holocaust happened. I know people have questions about the variety of some of it, but in terms of the Holocaust happened, and these people, like, they thought, look, we never want this to happen to us again. So what are we going to do? We're going to dominate society. Now, I have no problem with someone dominating society. You can be any race, religion, creed.
Yeah.
Someone's going to control things, but don't use it for evil.
As long as you're attacking other people, exactly.
Don't use it to oppress people. And that's what they did. They thought, look, we fear these people. We fear these blacks. We fear these whites. We fear these Muslims. We fear these Christians. Let's attack them all. So we'll do it through the whites and Christians, through internally, taking control of the government, taking control of Hollywood, politics, the media industry, the music industry for the blacks. You destroy their societies, and for the Muslims, it's bomb them, destroy the Middle East, destroy any kind of Muslim country. So that's literally what they did.
Yeah, also keeping people divided. And also, you mentioned earlier, like the films where they show the couples. Another thing they always do, a lot of times they make the man look dumb and the woman like leads. And obviously, I'm sure you probably agree with this. Ideal relationship, the man's leading, and both men and women prefer this. Most women don't want to lead a relationship, but if they have an incompetent man, they're forced to. They want a man that's strong, competent, and can lead, but they're being fed this from TV that men are incompetent, and that's causing a lot of the problems in society.
They do that, right? So if you look at what you said is exactly right. So the white male in the movie will be like some kind of
like a buffoon,
doofus. He'll like knock over himself. He'll trip over. And the woman is dominant, strong. So that's perpetuating feminism and weakening the man. So this has literally manipulated the minds of the society in that manner. And hence why you're seeing a huge population collapse amongst the white populace.
Yeah, it's completely like, I don't know the ratios, but I know white people are not hitting birth rate numbers.
So, for example, in the US, I believe it's 1.2. In the UK, it's around about the same number. So
That's
it means,
way off.
Yeah. So if you think about it, for each family, you need 2.4 children to maintain your population. So it means you and your wife need to have 2 children, and then someone else and their wife need to have 3 children, and between you, you're able to maintain the white population. As an example, when you're only 1.2, it means what's going to happen. So if you're meant to have 2, if the 2 of you are only producing 1. What's happened to the population? It's halving.
Yeah, it's halving. So yeah, these white guys that are bitching about, not enough kids have kids. I've seen these white nationalists bitching about it, which I am against flooding the country with immigrants, but also it's partially their fault for not having enough kids.
So I agree with you. So that's one of the attacks I get from the white people, which I think that I'm speaking for them. But they think I'm attacking them. But one thing is, yes, immigration is a problem, but also which they call white genocide. But also there's white suicide, which is literally you're doing it to yourself, and that is not having enough children, not making sure that you have defined gender roles, not making sure that the woman basically listens to the man and listens to monotheistic values where the man leads, as you said. And so when you're not having that, of course your population is going to collapse. So you can't blame. Yeah, of course you can blame others for other things, and you can say, look, these Zionists are controlling the media and causing it. But there's something called self-responsibility, and it's actually showing weakness that you're not being responsible and saying that, look, I'm going to be a responsible man. And I'm going to lead, and I'm going to make sure that I have a wife, and I'm going to make sure that I have children. And when you're not doing that, that shows a level of weakness. You're partaking in the actual suicide of your race.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are other problems, which we'll get into in a minute, but that's a huge one, is men need to go out, so get married, have kids. I mean, I'm personally not one of the guys saying, like, hey, against interracial relationships and stuff, but some of these guys are, and it's like, okay, then go get yourself a white wife, go have some kids. You can't just bitch about it and not try to be part of the solution. So
I agree with you 100%. And so therefore you have to educate your women. So like a father needs to educate his daughter and to say, because a lot of these guys who attack others, their own daughters are like LGBTQ.
Yeah.
And so in reality, you need to make sure that you're educating your family, educating the populace. And so when you're talking about interracial, like why are interracial families happening, right? So they'll say that it's imported, of course. Yeah. Some of it will be through the media. In reality, this is the case, right? So I'm very observant of this. So if you look at it, what happens is there'll be a white guy. He'll be like very, very good looking, right? He'll be like hench, 6 foot, chiseled body, and then he'll be with like a ugly minority. And it's like, what is going on? Because
you can't tell them apart. No.
Yeah.
You can't tell which Asians are hot and ugly.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But, so it's like, why is that happening? It's happening because basically they're realizing that white women are not going with them. And so therefore they're going for minorities. And then they're thinking, look, we're just going to have to settle. So if such good looking guys are having to settle, then what's happening to everybody else? And this is what's happening in society. So that's why I believe I'm so much against feminism. Like, I would say, and we're going to talk about this a bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
But like, I'm probably one of the people who's most against feminism compared to anybody else, because I know that it causes the most problems.
Yeah, I think we were kind of feuding, or not really feuding, but disagreeing over the boxing match in the Olympics. And I think it was more because I thought you didn't care if it was men in sports, but I think more you just didn't think women really should be competing in those kind of sports, or what's...
I support the T's over feminists all day long and twice on Tuesday. And I'll explain to you my reasoning for it.
Okay.
So LGBTQ, right? I don't agree with it. And even trans, I do believe that it is a mental health issue, right? But if you look at trans, let me ask you a question. When you look at transgender, do you think most of them are men, biological men changing to women, or is it biological women changing to men?
You remember the men that changed a lot more, but I think currently it's a lot, the younger people, it's a lot more women doing it.
Exactly.
But you don't really notice it as much because they just look like women.
Exactly. So in reality, when I ask this question to most people, they say it's biological men. But that's
those
not
are the ones that stick out. I'm just aware of it because my daughter's, when she was in high school, there was liberal school, there was a bunch of girls that were saying they were trans. Really, they were just unpopular girls that weren't attractive.
Exactly. So you experienced it in real life and you thought, actually, there's a lot.
I've seen it. It's the only reason.
Yeah,
I would have said it wrong if I hadn't seen it firsthand.
Yeah. Whereas in the media, if you look at it, and if you look at social media, they make you think that it's biological men changed to women, like Dylan Mulvaney and these type of people, Caitlyn Jenner and so on and so forth. But in reality, the vast majority of trans are biological men. And when you look at the under 16s, it's almost 5-1.
Yeah, women. Yeah, it's these women. They go through puberty. They hit like a hard time. It's that tough time for anyone, boys and girls. But for women, I think it's really hard if they're not fitting in. So what happens is this brainwashing they've pushed. They realize they can get more attention and be considered cooler if they say they're trans instead of an unattractive girl, and it gives them an excuse of why no one's paying attention. It's really sad, you know, because like I said, I've seen it firsthand. It's a sad situation, but it's a mental health issue, and it should not be encouraged. It should be like, no, you're not trans.
Exactly. So gender dysphoria occurs. So now the question becomes, when this is happening, and so now you've got LGBTQ, and then the extreme minority is trans, and then the men are the even more extreme minority. Now, if you look at the biological men who are being attacked, the trans women, they call it, right?
Yeah.
It's being attacked by mainly feminists. So if you look at the big people who are against the trans movement, is actual extreme radical feminists, like J.K. Rowling. So they always say we stand with J.K. Rowling. If you look at most of the extreme people who are against it, it's actually feminists. And if you look at it, they're like, why are these men taking away our rights? Why are these men dominating what we do? So for me, it's like this. There's two aspects to it. For me, it's like, if you believe in it, and first of all, even if you look at the trans ideology, which is that gender is a social construct, it actually was created by feminists in the past. So they created this issue first of all.
No, I mean, I agree with that part.
Yeah, and the second issue is this. When you basically got these biological men who are being attacked by feminists, and you're saying you want equality in the workplace. When you're looking at sports, right, you know you are an expert in this, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. The UFC.
Yeah.
If it was a card where it was just men,
and
they became where it was just men only cards and women only cards, how many people watch the women only cards?
Not that many. They're surprisingly, women's MMA is actually bigger than most women's sports. They've done a good job marketing it. I'm personally not a fan, but the men's MMA is way bigger. Yeah. And that's actually one of the few sports where the women actually do draw a little more than other sports. But most.
How do you know? Like, you would only know that if they allowed women's only for a long time.
Good point. Yeah, they're probably. Oh yeah, if they did it for a long time, it would be none because people would stop watching it. The only reason it could be there is because they're on the men's cards. They can get piggybacked off that. If it was just women separately, after a couple years, it would totally disappear.
Exactly. And so you know that because you're an athlete, right? And this is for all sports.
Yeah.
Like if you look at men's soccer, women's soccer, hardly anybody's watching it. If you look at NBA, it makes a loss. WNBA makes a loss compared to actual NBA. NBA supports WNBA.
That's why it's funny when they bitch about not enough pay. It's like you're literally you're a loss. You're a write-off for them. You're bitching about not being paid enough. No one's watching it.
Exactly. And so they cry about being equal pay. Serena Williams wants to get paid the same as Djokovic, even though like Djokovic played 5 sets and Serena Williams played 3 sets if it goes to the final. And so if you want equality and you want equality everywhere, then why not equality in sports? And therefore I say that, look, there should be either just one competition and therefore men should dominate. And I don't think women should be in sports anywhere, because actually when women go in sports, first of all, they don't have the skills to do it. It's actually being forced on us. And the second thing is, when you look at women's sports, disproportionately what happens is women actually do end up becoming LGBTQ, but in women's sports.
I've noticed that. I don't know if they were already lesbians or if the sport switched them that way. It
the
is
sports.
interesting.
It's the sports
But
that
just
switch 'em.
being an athlete myself, I guess the reason. I mean, I understand your perspective.
Yeah.
I've actually thought some of the things, but ultimately, that has crossed my mind. Your view of taking your stance, but I've ultimately decided to be slightly different. And being an athlete, it's just like, if every now and again a girl would want to spar, I would almost always say no, but in the rare occasions I'd be like, all right, and spar. And it's just like laughable. It's like, I let him punch me. I'm just going to like touch him because I know the difference between men and women.
Exactly.
It's just so massive. It's just the people have to be so stupid and naive to think that a woman could ever beat a man up that knows how to fight. Yeah, a really, really tough girl could beat up maybe some regular dude off the street, but they're not going to beat up a guy that could fight. So the difference is just so massive. And I understand the point. I think men's sports are way bigger, and I think they have in colleges in the U.S. they have this Title IX, which causes that they have to give the exact same as scholarship money for women and men, but way more men are serious in sports. So what happened is these men are losing scholarships. Guys like me with wrestling scholarships and stuff are having a harder time because they're trying to find girls, and there's men fighting over the scholarships. So I think this stuff's dumb. But ultimately, I think girls should be allowed to play sports still, though, and I think maybe shouldn't be pushed as much. And I think allowing men in them is just it's idiotic. And another part of it, it's asking us to like believe something we know isn't true is part of my problem. To accept that a man is a woman, it's just we'll accept anything. So we're accepting like the biggest lie. That's part of my problem with it too.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not. I'm in the position because I don't accept that the man is the woman. I actually think it's a man, right?
Yeah,
but I'm
so
just like, nice one. I support this man dominating the women's sports. And the second, the issue is like what the example you gave is the problem. So there's people who were elite sportsmen and they're not given opportunity because of equal rights. And yet women's sports is only there because it's been propagated by feminism. Because in reality, nobody's watching women's sports. And I don't think that women should be in sports. I think that there should be defined gender roles. I think there's a reason why feminism, and again, this is being pushed by feminism. Feminism is the biggest destruction of society. We're seeing a population collapse in our society because of feminism. And so therefore, for that reason, I think that women shouldn't be in sports. I think that women should be in the household. They should be bringing up the children. They should be looking after them. I should be having children. And so therefore, yeah, I'm completely against women in sports. So if you're going to be in sports, then let a man dominate.
Yeah, like women in jiu-jitsu, I'm not really a big fan of. I don't like training jiu-jitsu. It's like so so intimate, and all these guys are always sleeping with their students, which I think is completely, for my morals, I think it's wrong to sleep with people you're training under. So for me, it's like I think they should be separated, the men and women's jiu-jitsu. I don't like rolling around. It's like too sexual, the positions, and you always see these girls leaving their husbands for their jiu-jitsu instructors. There's been several big celebrities like Tom Brady's wife left him for a jiu-jitsu instructor. Anthony Bourdain's wife. There was another celebrity I just saw. So it's like, why are these guys letting their wife go train jiu-jitsu with other men? To me, that seems insane. Like, what kind of man would be like, oh yeah, you're gonna go roll around with these men on the mat?
Well, they're cooked men, aren't they? And what you said is very interesting, because what you're saying is that when a woman is learning from a man, there's this kind of like they end up having feelings for each other, right?
Exactly.
Because of the positions and time they spend together.
And they're looking at him as like their role model, and that's why I always thought it was wrong to sleep with any students. But a lot of men obviously don't feel that way.
And so like this is actual real good evidence explaining why the data shows that when women are in women-only sports, lesbianism increases so much. So if you look at it in soccer, it's significantly disproportionately higher. Olympics, I believe the numbers were hugely higher. If you look at even ballet, which isn't even considered really sport, women tend to be lesbian when they do ballet because they're female instructors, and then they'll go
Interesting, because people look up to their instructors a lot.
Exactly. So
I've never thought about other sports, but I bet it's very common in other sports for women probably to sleep with their instructors. Just in jiu-jitsu, it happens to be they're almost always male.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like for me, like it's what's funny. Some of the extreme Muslim guys, they won't train with women, and sometimes the women get offended because guys will be like, "No, I won't train with you." But it's like it's different culture. You need to accept that. If I had girls and I was running classes, be like, "Oh, he won't train with me." I'm like, "Yeah, he's from like Dagestan or something. If he doesn't want to train with you, it's his religion. Don't give me attitude. Leave the gym if you're gonna give me a problem about that."
Well, it makes sense based on what you're saying, because you're saying that sometimes it is quite sexual. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really, but the positions could be looked at that way. Like their legs are around you and stuff. I mean, when you're trying hard, it's not at all. But if it's like a girl and it's like they're not, it's not like they're giving you much of a match. It's just I don't like it. I understand why the Muslims don't.
Yeah, it makes sense.
No, but it's interesting, and yeah, and the Muslims, it's like I always get a lot of hate for being pro-Muslims and stuff. People are like, oh, the Muslims hate you. But I've been to a lot of these Middle Eastern countries and been treated amazing. I think the best hospitality I ever had is some of these countries. I remember, well, not Middle East, but Morocco at Christmas, they bring me Christmas cakes even though they don't celebrate it, and presents. And I mean, Turkey, going through there, random people invite me for their house to like have tea and stuff like that. It's some of the best treatment I've ever got in the Middle East. Like guys wanting to have just, random strangers wanting to have conversations. So I've been treated so great by Muslims for the most part. Obviously there's bad people in anything.
Yeah, there's bad people in all religions, races, and creeds. And one of the things in Islam is that you basically show respect to others. You show them with love. and dignity. It's morality is an important part of the religion of Islam, not treating someone badly. That's why, like, for example, me, I would never betray someone because I think it's just morally, ethically wrong. And so Islamically, yeah, that is an important Islamic moral. And I agree with you. In Islam, Muslims don't hate white people. If anything, they're appreciative of white culture, white civilization. So as an example, myself, I live in the Britain, right? And I'm third generation.
Yeah.
And I appreciate a lot of the things in the UK. I appreciate a lot of the freedoms we've had. I appreciate the civilization that we've been brought up in. So, for example, you know, when people say, "Oh, he hates white people," I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't actually hate white people. I actually appreciate Western civilization." And just as an example, because you know, people say, "Oh, just take me as an example." So I'm like third generation. My origins are Pakistani.
Yeah.
I've been brought up in a northeast, which is largely a white area, and even my friends in school were basically mainly white. Right now, at the same time, I'm quite religious, and so now if you take me and you take someone from Pakistan who was born, brought up in Pakistan, we don't have the same frame of mind.
Yeah.
We don't have the same upbringing, and we don't have the same thought process. So the problem then becomes is like when people say, "Oh, look, you're not really British." Okay, like. Actually, British is a nationality.
You said third generation. I would say you're British at that point.
yeah, exactly. And so in reality, like, so I'm not Anglo-Saxon, but like in terms of being British, having British values, that's what we basically have. So like I know we're going to talk about the protests. Actually, let me talk about it now. So like, for example, now you look at the protests that happened, right?
Yeah.
And let me explain to you like what happened. So in reality, those Muslims who came out against the people in the far right who were attacking, right? The reality of the situation is that they've actually assimilated. So, for example, when our grandparents came to the UK, and maybe someone would call them Paki or whatever, they just like put their head down and like just accept it and walk into their house and not do anything, or people will try and slam them, and they'll separate themselves from kind of like white culture. They'll have a totally different culture themselves.
Yeah.
What's actually happened is if you look at second generation and third generation people, they've actually assimilated into society. So people from the northeast or the north, like you know how you in the US you guys have like kind of like hillbillies.
Yeah.
Right. So we have like something called chavs, who are like kind of like
they're hillbillies.
Sorry.
Kind of like our
Kind of like
hillbillies.
hillbillies, a bit different, but like basically working class chavs, right? And what's happened is like these minorities have actually assimilated into that culture, so they've actually become like them, and they've all become the same. So when you look at the protesters, those who were protesting and those who were on the other side, they were all acting the same. Because they've actually assimilated. So our grandparents wouldn't have acted like that. Our grandparents would have been like, "Oh, they're smashing our houses up. We're just going to stay in the house. We're not going to do anything about it. They're smashing our streets up. We're just going to like stay in the corner." But these guys are like, "Look, you guys are burning things up. We're going to come out and do the exact same thing."
Yeah.
So actually, my argument is that they actually have extremely assimilated, and they actually, so when they look like when they'll, you know, I don't do this because I'm a nerd, right? But like when they'll drive their cars and do their little wheelies or whatever, that's literally culture, northern culture. So
Yeah.
From
an outsider, I don't know enough about England, but it looks like there's assimilation problems over there. It's more from an outsider perspective. It looks like they're not really mixing that well. But like, are they getting along, hanging out the same places? Or because in the U.S., for the most part, Muslims have immigrated well. I think there's a few places where maybe they haven't, but like throughout the U.S., people are pretty much hanging out. But it seems like it's completely separated in England.
No, this is like the kind of perspective they give, right? So if you look at London is quite multicultural anyway. So there's a huge amount of assimilation that's already occurred in London. Hence why, when you look at the protesters, they didn't go into London. Because there's so much.
Because assimilated there pretty well.
Assimilated, and there's so much diversity. So like, I believe even in London, so in the UK, the white population is about 82% and non-white is 18%. But in London specifically, it's like 55% white and 45% non-white, or 60% white and 40% non-white. And so there's a huge amount of like assimilation. And so if you look at the people who were protesting, they didn't do it in areas where there was a lot of assimilation. They actually did it in areas where there was extreme minority of minorities, and then went to those areas. So that's in reality what happened. So there is a significant amount of assimilation in the UK. Where there isn't assimilation is this. So like I told you, I was in the education system for 10 years. So what happens is, as part of the education system, after the September the 11th, what happened was there was this attack on Muslims, and they created something called Prevent. And that was by people like Tommy Robinson, who is a Zionist, and people like Majid Nawaz, who's a Muslim Zionist at that time. I know he switched up now, but at that time he was. And these guys attacked the Muslim community, and they put Prevent in. So anyone who kind of displayed Muslim values, they would go. So even if you like were religious, if you were against LGBTQ, if you believed in divine gender roles, they would come and take your children away from you.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so that's how it was in the UK. So people like Tommy Robinson created this thing called Prevent. Now Prevent is being used against white nationalists. Now
wow.
Prevent is being used against people who have, for example, Andrew Tate, you know, they say he's misogynist. They're being used against that. But that Prevent was created by or perpetuated by these people through Quilliam Foundation. So they did that through the society over 10, 20 years. Now, what's happened is when you look at Tommy Robinson, and this is why a lot of people attack me for basically being against the protesters.
Yeah.
But for me, and I tried to use a label, and I didn't know what was the right label to use because I know there's people in the far right who don't hate Islam. People like Nick Fuentes. People, I don't think you're part of the far right, but I know people label you as that.
People call me that sometimes, but yeah.
There's many people in the far right who actually are against immigration but don't hate Muslims. So Tommy Robinson is somebody who's in the far right, but he
like hates Muslims.
He hates
huh?
Muslims.
Yeah.
So I tried to use the word like far right Islamophobe, and maybe they got upset that I used the word far right or whatever it may be, because I tried to give like a label which is specific to Tommy Robinson, because Tommy Robinson is for immigration. He's just against Islam.
That's so weird.
Yeah, so if you look at it, videos in the past, he says like, I'm for Indian immigration, I'm for immigration from every country, I'm just against
So
Muslims.
he's strictly anti-Islam. Interesting.
Anti-Islam, yeah. So if you look at most of the immigration that's in the UK, legal immigration in the UK is coming from India. 1 million Indians have come to the UK in the last 5 years.
Wow.
India's not a Muslim country. China's second. 350,000 Chinese have come to the UK over the last 5 years. China's not a Muslim country. And the third one is Nigeria. 350,000 Nigerians have come
These
to the
are
UK.
all legally.
All legally have come to the UK.
Yeah, I mean, we might disagree here, but my thoughts are I'm not against immigration, but I think they're doing way too much, way too fast, both in the U.S., Europe, and it's changing cultures too fast. I think immigration needs to be done really slowly, bringing people over, getting them adjusted to society. Like in the U.S., I don't know if you follow, but our borders are pretty much as open. People are just walking through in massive amounts, mostly all men. I think it's like 80, 90% men just walking across the border. Most of the women that come through have been raped, and they're not like, they're coming in, they're getting free money. They're getting, I think I read in California today, they're talking about giving them money for a down payment for a house in California. They're getting free hotels in New York, free health insurance. I don't have to pay my health insurance. They're just getting stuff that we're paying for. And to me, it just seems, I think a lot of Americans feel that way, where it's getting us, it's just getting them angry. They don't necessarily, they don't hate the immigrants. I don't blame them for coming across, but I hate the government for just allowing them to walk in and take resources. And it needs to be done slowly. And these guys, need to find jobs. They need to be bringing, there need the same amount of women should be coming through as men, or I would say more women personally, but.
Yeah. So first of all, I completely agree with you. And that's my point. Like our position on immigration is exactly the same.
Yeah, I thought you were, for some reason, I thought you were more for the open border or something. I think someone told me that or something.
Yeah, that's just propaganda.
You're feuding with a few of my friends.
Yeah,
and whatnot,
yeah. That's just propaganda because they're not very smart and low IQ. But in terms of, no, my position is exactly the same. So when I come to the US and I see the fact that the culture's changed so much, because I regularly travel to the US.
Yeah.
So when I came in 2014, it is so much different to 2024 in 10 years. So, like, I'm shocked. I walk through New York as an example.
Yeah,
and
New
it just
York's
smells
changed
of
a
weed.
lot. Yeah, it's
it
crazy.
just smells of weed. Like, you look at many states in the US and all it does is smell of weed. That's not classically white culture. So I do think it's important that white culture, so America was a white Protestant Anglo-Saxon country. That's how it basically originated. And so therefore, I do believe that America should be largely white, because I think that once you change the demographic completely, it no longer be what it is. When I come to US now, like, most people hardly even speak English. Like, I'm not being horrible.
There's areas you go to and they're all speaking Spanish.
Like,
and
whenever
stuff
I
like
go
that.
into a cab, there's rarely someone speaks. So if I'm walking down the street and I ask for directions, it's like I rarely. So I think it's important to keep and preserve something that has made US great. So I'm not against immigration. What I'm against is when, as you said, like people, when they try and demonize it, or for example, they'll just blame immigrants. They won't say, oh yeah, it's just the immigrants, and like we're not going to blame ourselves for not having enough children. So that's where I disagree. And like people like who you mentioned, he'll be like, oh, don't blame white women. But white liberal women are also the reason why there's a population collapse. So I think that lack of responsibility shows that these people are actual extreme feminists themselves, because they don't have the brains to understand that, look, we can control this and we can do this. So they think that when I make that point, that I'm also saying that I'm allowing immigration. But I'm not for open borders. I actually think that there should be controls. I don't want, and US is 58% white, right? So already white people are going to be the minority.
Yeah, it's not far off.
Yeah.
Not having kids the same rate. And so, yeah, like I said.
And again, where's the immigration coming to in the US? It's, again, from Mexico, the number one. Number two is India. Number three is China. So again, the same countries. So
yeah, it's weird. Like the Chinese walking through, like, some are coming legally, but some are coming across the border illegally too, which is just weird. Like, how do they get there from like China or like Haiti or Africa? It seems organized from some people that are trying to destroy the country.
Yeah, well, I do agree that it's organized by the Zionists to, again, destroy Western civilization. So I agree with reducing immigration. My only issue is this, that this is what I'm saying. Like, this is just basic geography. Like anybody who's learned high school geography knows there's push and pull factors, right? So what it is if you're not having enough children,
Yeah.
then you're going to be forced to have some form of immigration. So I'm saying have children.
Yeah.
And then you can like stop immigration. That's fine. Even stop it if you need to.
Yeah.
But you need to have children. If you're not going to have children,
Then
and
you're
then
gonna
you're
have to bring
crying
them
about
in.
immigration as well, you're basically destroying your own society. That's my only argument. Like,
Yeah, Japan's facing that collapse right now because they're not having enough sex, not having enough kids. Their rate is so low, but they actually have a really nice, clean culture. That I don't know if you've been to Japan, but it's really cool. I'm sure they're little racist there. I can tell they'd never treat me as like a Japanese if I lived there. They treated me good, but you can tell they're a little, not necessarily racist is the correct word, but that's what some people would call it. They're very like nationalistic, but they're not having enough kids. Right now, there's like zero crime in Japan. You can leave your bike out. You can do whatever.
but what's
Girls
the
can walk
reason
at
for that?
night.
So this is like what Ryan Dawson says all the time, and then when I push back on it, he doesn't really have an answer. So like if you look at their culture, Japan and South Korea, you're right, the population collapse is basically horrendous. It's much worse than UK and US. So it can't be just modernity, right?
Yeah.
Because we've got modernity, America's got modernity, Britain's got UK. So why is their
Have
population
they
3
pushed
times worse?
feminism there too, or no? I don't know enough about their culture.
So I believe it's this. It's again extreme feminism because the women aren't actually getting with men. If women aren't getting with men, it is this idea that that man is not good enough for me. That is an ideology which is within feminism. Also, you know the reason why that the crime rate is quite low as well, because what's happening is life is so hard for a Japanese man.
Yeah, they work ton of pressure. They work
Yeah.
really hard.
They actually what they're doing is rather than here, you know, when life's hard for an American man, sometimes he'll commit a crime.
Yeah.
He'll go to prison. He'll do these things wrong. But that same man in Japan, he just won't commit the crime. He's killing himself.
Yeah.
So the suicide
Suicide
rate
rate's
in Japan
massive,
and South
yeah.
Korea is massively high. So it's not like they literally don't have these issues. They've got these issues, but all that's happening is people are murdering themselves.
Interesting. Yeah, no, Japan, like I said, it's an interesting country, but we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, and the reason they're murdering themselves and the reason why they're not having children, I believe, is because of lack of religion and lack of monotheistic values. And so when a person doesn't believe in God, they'll murder themselves. They'll commit suicide.
Interesting. But yeah, you see the collapse all over.
Yeah, and the collapse is happening all over. So for me, I'm for immigration to be like even stopped or decreased significantly, but you need to start having children. And same with the UK, our birth rate is collapsing significantly. We've got an aging population and a very low birth rate. Who's going to look after those elderly people?
No, that's
like,
that it is a real problem.
Yeah.
So I think people would have more kids. But like I said, I'm not against immigration. I think it's being slowed way down.
Yeah, and so in the UK, I'm against immigration as well, in the sense of if you look at where the immigration is coming from, again, so people think I'm trying to back up my own people, but they don't even come from Muslim countries. So it's India, China,
Yeah.
Nigeria. None of those are Muslim countries. And that
Interesting.
immigration happens significantly from that. Even the illegal immigration, because we really don't know where the illegal immigration is coming from. So people blame Muslim countries, but I've seen it myself. I know this is anecdotal,
Yeah.
but there's significant amount of Indians who are actually doing illegal immigration in the UK.
Interesting.
But illegal immigration isn't even a problem in the UK. So do you know how many illegal immigrants we have in the UK?
How many?
In 1 year, we only have 30,000.
Oh, so it's not like the U.S. where
It's
there's
nothing like the
millions,
US,
yeah.
but it's because Americans think we have this problem, so then they believe that UKs have the same level of problem. UK has a problem in terms of legal immigration. There's way too much of it. And obviously, like our Prime Minister was Indian, Priti Patel Suella Braverman is Indian, the Foreign Minister was Indian, so they brought a lot of Indians into the country. Again, Indians are Muslims. Actually,
Yeah.
they dislike Muslims. So again, I'm for decreasing immigration
Yeah.
significantly. But it's basic geography, right? So like a lot of these people didn't probably pass high school, so they don't understand that. Look, it's push and pull factor. So
Yeah.
if you're gonna, the problem is that you need to then have children. So that's it. That's the reality of it. So for me, it's like everything's like
Yeah. Another thing with immigrants, people always say, the Muslim immigrants, but there's a lot of Muslim countries, so cultures aren't necessarily the same. So there might be certain countries where the culture is totally different. So it's kind of lumping them all together can be a little bit problematic, I would say.
Yeah, there's Muslims from a wide range of cultures. And look, Muslim countries that do well, they allow immigration. So if you look at Dubai and if you look at Qatar, they have a huge number of Western immigrants, right? A huge number of Westerners go to it. So like, for example, I've got a brother who lives in Dubai. There's so many people from the UK going there because, again, the lifestyle, they prefer the lifestyle, they prefer it. So immigration happens to countries that are doing well. So Dubai has a high level of immigration. Qatar has a high level of immigration.
White immigrants?
Yeah,
Sure.
of
Interesting.
white immigrants from
No, I know a lot of people are going to Dubai and stuff now.
yeah,
It's really
from
popular.
America and from UK, a huge amount from the UK. And now Saudi Arabia, based on their policy shifts, watch now, the immigration to Saudi is going to be really high as well.
Yeah, they're shifted. Didn't they legalize drinking recently?
They're
Or they're making certain containment zones
Yeah,
where you drink,
yeah,
maybe is
they-
what it is. Because
yeah, they're
Saudi
allowing-
Arabia is trying to totally they've changed a lot. Women can drive now. You're probably like, oh, not good, not good.
Well, look,
more car crashes, I bet.
Yeah. So Islamically, I think women should be are allowed to drive. So there's no thinking on that. But just from our own understanding from Western culture, that women can't drive as well as men.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend from Saudi Arabia who lives over here, and he said he went. Every time he goes back, it's culture shocks. It's totally different. He says like DJs playing, people partying. He says just the change has been insane over the last like 5-10 years there.
There is, because they want they're going to allow a huge amount of immigration into Saudi Arabia. So what's going to happen is, again, they're creating that neon city. So there's going to be a huge amount of, again, immigration from the UK, from Australia, from America that's going to go to that country.
So it's going to be the opposite of what the West had, of the Muslims coming in changing culture. They're going to have Westerners coming in changing cultures. That's going to be
that's what's happening.
Interesting. But ultimately, it's just kind of the way the world's going to happen, I guess. You have to kind of learn to coexist with different cultures.
No, I think coexistence is important. Like, I believe that you respect all people's race, religions, and cultures. Like, I don't disrespect people. Like, for example, even the black nationalists. Like, I understand some of their arguments. I don't disrespect them. Like, I get what they're coming from. I get where the white people who come to white nationalists are coming from. I get where everyone's coming from. At the end of the day, you have to be able to coexist. You have to be able to respect each other, and you have to be able to respect each other's values. And the problem occurs is when people try and demonize the other. So, like, going back to the protest that happened in the UK. So I'll just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
So
I don't know enough about that. What I saw, it looked pretty bad, but I didn't have a very good understanding of it. So it was kind of like complex. Like, I guess people got stabbed, so they're mad, but you can't blame a whole, religion. It happens to other people. So I think the people they feel angry too many people flooding in, but obviously attacking and burning is not the right solution.
So this is what happened, right? So what happened was there was a guy who did a stabbing, and he stabbed and killed children, which is horrific.
Yeah, absolutely horrible.
Which is horrendous, right? But then what happened was people on social media, mainly Zionists, but also others, perpetuated a lie. And they said that it was a Muslim guy who was Palestinian Jordanian. He was an illegal immigrant who just come off on a dinghy, right? So people thought, whoa, this Muslim guy, illegal immigrant, has killed these beautiful children.
Yeah, absolutely horrific.
So what they did was they got angry and they started attacking mosques, right?
Dang.
So they went to attack mosques, but it was a lie. The guy wasn't Muslim. He was Christian. The guy wasn't an illegal immigrant. His parents were from Rwanda. They came to the UK. He was actually born in the UK.
He's from Rwanda.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I didn't know. Like, I think I was busy during that, so I didn't follow it that close. I just saw images of like riots going on. And I think part of it, people are just angry overall at the government. The government's screwing them. Their wages are going down, like the inflation's out of control. So people are angry and they want something to blame. And I think
100%.
Immigration, I think it is part of the problem, but there's a lot of problems. And when people are angry, they want something to lash out on.
People in the UK are struggling. The reason people in the UK are struggling is because of COVID policies,
the lockdowns,
businesses closed down. You had the Ukraine-Russia war, which is financially supported. You had Brexit that happened that financially crippled people in the UK. So all of these things that happened, people in the UK are struggling badly. So of course they're going to start, the people in power are going to make people working class turn on each other. For sure, that's literally what happened. I agree with you. But in terms of these politics and protesters, then what happened was, so they lied. So then they started attacking mosques, and they didn't release the name of the person who it was. And so a lot of these accounts, like Tommy Robinson, who's a Zionist-controlled person, and a lot of these other accounts start perpetuating this lie. And then people start attacking mosques. And I said at that time, I said, look, and then as soon as we found out, I started perpetuating. I said, look, it's not even a Muslim guy. It's a guy from Rwanda. He's actually not an immigrant. He's born in the UK.
Interesting.
But his parents immigrated from Rwanda. And they basically did it on purpose because, again, Tommy Robinson isn't anti-immigration. He's anti-Islam. So I even said, look, this is Zionist-controlled lies, because if you look at it, it was like Ian Miles Chung, it was like Libs of TikTok, it was End of Wokeness,
all the worst accounts.
It was all the accounts who were perpetuating this lie. I believe I was one of the few people who was right at that time, because I literally said, look, this is Zionists because they want to perpetuate this lie to basically get these people to turn on each other. And what I find ironic is the very same people who complain about Jewish control will literally be manipulated by the Zionist controlled media. And then what happened was the next day, when they were attacking these mosques, another guy came with a knife.
Yeah.
And again, it was a guy with a beard. And they said, oh, it's a Muslim guy. And again, that ended up being a lie because it ended up being actually a white Caucasian guy.
I think I saw that one. Then I realized it's like, oh man, another one. Then I realized it was a white guy.
Yeah, it was Jordan Davis, I believe his name was. Again, it was that other day. So then what happened was Tommy Robinson.
So why did this white guy do this? Is this crazy, or he's trying to instigate more problems?
Yeah, trying to instigate more problems.
Why he did it?
Yeah, either instigating more problems. And so then what happened was a lot of these people did the BLM. So they start basically, led by Tommy Robinson and perpetuated on social media, they start attacking police. They start burning police stations. They start burning businesses. And a lot of these businesses...
Yeah, I shouldn't do the businesses. The police station, I don't feel that bad for, but
but a lot of these businesses that they're destroying are like working class areas. They're poor areas. You know what BLM were doing? We were like, oh my God, you guys are so
tearing
dumb.
your own neighborhoods down.
You're destroying your own neighborhood. So already poor neighborhoods, you're making it much worse. So what is the logical reason for it? This is what these guys, they were doing the exact same thing. So like, for example, one of the like places they burned down was people who used to help people get into work. Working class white people, they were getting into work.
Dang.
They burned that down. So as an example, that's what they were burning down. And then they were also attacking Muslims, because in a lot of these areas, there was only a small minority of Muslims. Then what happened was then certain Muslims in certain areas start coming out.
Yeah, because I saw that guys coming back with machetes
Exactly,
and
with
stuff back. So I
machetes
saw
and
those
bats.
clips.
But their argument was that we did it in self-defense because basically we were seeing our women getting attacked and they believed that the police were allowing them to do it. So then what happened was they start coming out. So you saw basically in a lot of areas, it was just people who I call far-right Islamophobes, because if they were against immigration, it would be about immigration, but it was literally about attacking Muslims. And so then what happened was they were coming out. And again, they were acting in the same manner as these guys. So they were both attacking each other because they've all assimilated.
Yeah.
And so then what you saw was like, again, they perpetuated this lie. But what you'll notice is this. First of all, they lied. So intellectually they lied. But physically, they only attacked areas that were basically largely extreme minority of Muslims. So everybody knew they weren't going to turn up to London. Everybody knew they weren't going to turn up to Birmingham. And everybody knew they weren't going to turn up to Manchester, because those have a more of a minority population. But funny enough, what happened was it wasn't just the minorities. Again, white people actually came out in their numbers to stand up against these people.
The Muslims ones.
Yeah. And if you saw the protests, the counter protests, it was a huge number of white people who were in them. So it just demonstrates, people in Britain, actually, except for these kind of minority of people, the vast majority of people actually
get along
very well.
Yeah, I've been to London. It didn't seem like there wasn't much problems compared to I've been to France, and it seemed like there was a lot of problems. And like Paris seems like there is a lot of problems. London, I didn't feel that way. A little bit, but not like majorly.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for Europe because I'm not an expert on the data on it. But in the UK, I know the UK data and information like the back of my hand. And I know that there aren't any issues in the UK. In UK is very much more towards the left, hence why Keir Starmer won. And again, Keir Starmer is a Zionist controlled person who's been put in the place. So again, when they're attacking Keir Starmer, it makes no sense because that's the guy they put in themselves. Because in reality, he did all of this. If you look at it, he allowed these protests to happen. He allowed the lies to occur. They could have put this information out quite early. So I do think that a lot of this was orchestrated by the.
Yeah, one thing I did see there that seemed a little absurd. I've seen guys that were like kind of caught in the riots. They're getting like 3-4 year prison sentences. I don't think they had much prior to like working class people. And some of the things I saw they did were pretty minor. Like one lady was like pushing a trash can, like fell towards the police and got like 4 years. And people for like Facebook posts. I mean, what do you thought of that? Do you think it's like overkill, or do you think?
So I can give you a bit of history on this. So like what happened was in the UK we've had these instances before. Every like 10 years, something like this happens. So we had something similar where Tommy Robinson and his crew pretended like they were going to go to a certain area, and it was Bradford. And what happened was a lot of Muslim guys turned up to Bradford to basically fight them, right? But Tommy Robinson's people didn't come there. And then what these Muslims guys did was start doing the same thing. They start burning police stations. They start attacking local businesses, burning places, burning property, attacking the police. And they got the most extreme sentences ever.
Oh, wow.
We, at that time, I thought, it was Islamophobia, but it wasn't, right? So what happened was, like, someone stole a water bottle, they got, like, 5 years.
Wow.
Like, the sentences were crazy.
Yeah, to me, that's just too extreme,
So what it is Britain's got a history of putting down harsh sentences when people riot. So they did it against the Muslim community at that time, these guys who were rioting in Bradford, which I'm against all of this unruly behavior. But this is what happened. So, like, when this happened, they did the exact same thing. But in addition to that, what happened was, and this is what I said very early on in social media, that Zionists did this on purpose because in the UK is pro-Palestine significantly.
Yeah.
So if you look at the adult population.
Most of the white people too, probably, or a lot of them, yeah.
The vast majority of white people.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the protests, it's nearly 80-90% white. Like the white people in the UK are just awesome, right? And so what happened was, if you look at the UK population is about 60-70 million, right? But the adult population who can actually come out is about 30-40 million.
Yeah.
Despite our population being so small, in one weekend we had 1.3 million people turn up to protest for pro-Palestine.
Wow.
And every week we had millions upon millions upon millions of people, because the UK is very much pro-Palestine to the extent where the Zionist-controlled government wanted to shut it down. So Suella Braverman, as an example, who's an Indian person, but a Zionist, because she's married to an IDF agent, she basically wanted to ban pro-Palestinian protest.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're trying to do that all over Europe. It's insane.
Yeah, and she wanted to stop any kind of speech against Zionism. But it wouldn't work because the UK there's too many people who are pro-Palestine. So the aim was always there to censor. So what they did was they used this to censor, So what they're doing now is these protests, they're doing harsh sentences. And the harsh sentences wasn't just to white people, it was to Muslims as well. So both sides got extreme harsh sentences.
Yeah, I'm guessing sentences, but at least they're doing them same racially. Like in the U.S., like January 6th, that was more politically, but they got like 30 years versus no for BLM. And it's ridiculous when you're getting different, depending on your politics, how much time you're getting.
Yeah, I agree.
Certain cities in the U.S. are doing it too. Some of the liberal cities are giving like more time towards white people than black people. The exact opposite of what supposedly it used to be. And you see that, and it's just not, when something's given out differently per race, you can't really have a society existing that way.
Exactly.
All races have to be treated exactly the same, in my opinion.
And so like people on social media, like the Zionists are saying two-tier Kia, and try to make it look like there was a two-tier system.
I mean, that's how it looked to me, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. They looked so, the sentences look so extreme, and I've seen that has happened in the U.S. for sure, like January 6th, perfect example. So it looked that way, but if they've done the same thing to the Muslims, I still think the sentences are too long, but at least it's a little more fair.
Yeah, I think the sentences are too long. Yeah, it's 2 years, but they've done it in the past as well, you see. They've done it in the Bradford riots. They did even more harsher sentences at that time. So if you look at it, even like 10 years later...
So at least you feel like they're doing it evenly.
They're doing it evenly based on what they did in the past. And even now, like I know people in Middlesbrough who basically, Muslim guys who basically got very harsh sentences, the same sentences, like basically 2 years or 2.5 years.
Yeah, crazy for like a little out of control riot. Yeah, unless you like badly hurt someone, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So
that can ruin your life if you're like a working class person. You know, your family might fall apart. You have kids to take care of, lose your job. It can totally destroy someone's 100%.
Life. I'm just against all of this because I know these working class areas are so poor. And when you're destroying the areas, I'm not even against that. Never mind attacking people, even destroying the areas. I know how badly people are struggling. And so these basically white middle class areas, which are largely they are, because the north is mainly white middle class, working class. And so they are struggling. And when you're destroying businesses, it's having a huge problem.
When you destroy a business, if you burn a business, that's a little different. But some of these people I saw just like pushing trash cans, like ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, of course. They were pushing trash cans. But if you look at it, some were smashing windows of businesses, some were going in nicking phones. So like they were doing a huge amount of things. So anyway, again, like even then, I think the sentences were too harsh. But this is what they've done in the UK. And then what the UK has done is what the Zionists want. Now what they're doing is they're making UK into more of a police state, and they're doing even more censorship. So the Zionists won.
Yeah. Did you see? Well, Germany, first off, they're arresting the protesters, but then also they added to their to become a citizen of Germany, you now have to say Israel has a right to exist. To be a citizen. Like how crazy is that?
Well, Germany's always had this problem, right? Where in terms of censorship, in terms of speech, remember, Germany is the place where if you deny the Holocaust, you go to prison. So just think about the level of non-speech they have there. So Germany's been in control for a very long time. Germany's been the whipping boy. So as an example, with Nord Stream. So when Ukraine and America destroy, I know they deny it, but we know it was them, right?
I mean, it pretty much looks pretty certain at this point, I think.
Yeah,
I think they've almost admitted it seems like.
Now they're saying Zelensky, but we know they were all involved, right? So like when they destroyed Nord Stream, Germany was benefiting from the Nord Stream because they were the supply line for Nord Stream. So when they destroyed Nord Stream, Germany got the biggest brunt of it because now when they were the supply line, now they're getting supply from Poland. So that is just an example of how much Germany is a whipping boy of the entire world, but also within their nation, there's this extreme Zionist control. Hence why you can't deny the Holocaust. You can attack Muslims, you can attack Christians, but you can't even question the Holocaust.
Yeah, it's crazy that you should be able to, in my opinion, ultimate free speech. You should be able to question any historical event. Like, look at real time. We don't even know what's happening. It's hard figuring out what's happening with real news events. We're always saying what happened, like the protests, trying to figure out what happened. It's really confusing. Different people give you different opinions. I'm sure someone else might give me a totally different opinion than you did.
Yeah.
But I should always be able to hear all the different perspectives. And this is literally on camera. But to look back at this one event, if you say like, hey, maybe it happened slightly different, you'll go to prison.
Well, we know this, isn't it? Because we've been in part of the Israel-Palestine. We've been debunking a lot of the stuff. The 40 beheaded babies, the baked babies, the babies on the washing line, the chemical attacks,
the mass
rapes. Every single thing in real time was a lie. And we have Twitter that we were able to debunk it. If we didn't have Twitter, we wouldn't be able to debunk it.
It would go down in history books. They beheaded 40 babies.
Yeah.
It was they had mass rapes, and they could make it where they put you in jail for questioning it.
Exactly.
That's why you should always be able to question things. To me, it's absolutely insane that you can't question it. That's the one thing that makes me want to question it.
And the basic thing that we learned in school was right. The very thing that they learned is that basically history is written by the victors. So we know that's something that's taught in basic education, and yet we think that who were the victors? So clearly that you should be allowed to question it. You should be allowed to question the fact that, for example, even at that time, for example, when Jewish people left Nazi Germany and they went to America, they were literally saying, look, the Holocaust happened in America. Like, now you're lying.
Yeah.
Right? So we know this is documented. I'm not someone who denies the Holocaust, right? I do believe it happened. In terms of the numbers, even academics question the numbers. For example, Norman Finkelstein says it was many academics says 3. Some people say it's 2. Like there's a
Yeah, no,
disagreement.
exactly. We should be able to question the numbers.
Yeah.
I definitely think something happened too, but we just don't know. Like something obviously happened there. Hitler obviously didn't like Jews and was mistreating them. But the
Yeah.
fact of that we can't question how many he killed is absurd. Like I can question how many people Mao killed in China. They say 50 million. I could question that. As I should be able to.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty damn high. I should be able to like go through and try to figure out. I don't know. That sounds a little fudge to me. But if you do it there, they'll say you're a Holocaust denier, a racist, a Nazi. It's absolutely insane.
Which is
Such
ridiculous
good
because
propaganda.
It's not just propaganda. It's like, for example, now one of the bedrocks of Western civilization is that we're able to use our intellect, that we're not controlled, that we're not manipulated. One of the arguments against Nazi Germany, which again children learn in school books, is that it was a regime that perpetuated extreme propaganda. You weren't allowed to go against the narrative of the state, right? So this is what children are taught in school, right? And yet, isn't that what you're doing exactly here? Like, we're not allowed to question. We're not allowed to research information. We're not allowed to look at data that happened historically. So again, it's like literally doing the thing.
Yeah, it's literally the only event I'm told I'm not allowed to question. To me, I don't go along with that. I think it's ridiculous. I think more people are starting to be like, this is ridiculous. But if just for questioning it before, they still try to ostracize you from society just for being like, hey, maybe this, or maybe they. But this is the only event in history that use gas, and we can't question that. Like, why would they put them in a?
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of questions that people have, and you should be able to ask them. Maybe there's legitimate answers for
exactly,
it, right?
Exactly. That's people. They should be able to discuss it. That's like argument. Like, how do the wars hold up with millions of people? Like stuff like that.
Yeah, you should be able to question. And actually, there is legitimate academics, such as Norman Finkelstein, who's a guy whose family was in the hospital, such as various other academics who've also said like 6 million number isn't legit. I actually know a lot of Jew guys, again, Orthodox Jews guys who are literally like, yeah, okay, like we're not going to debate the number. We're going to debate whether the Holocaust happened or not. So again, this is like something that's well known or well debated or in academia. So like the fact that it's illegal is just unfathomable.
Yeah, but like no one can really, you can't argue it. Like even historians are not supposed to come in. They tell historians they can't even go argue that it happened because they don't want it even discussed.
Yeah, but if you look at academia, it's actually there. Like people have. So again, like it's just.
But they won't publish anything though, right? Like privately or.
No, so like Norman Finkelstein was published. He said 5 million. There was another academic paper I read a while ago, maybe about 10 years ago, which said about 3 million. So they have been published. Yeah, some of them have. Yeah.
But yeah, but it's not major variation.
Yeah, because you're not allowed to like.
You literally go to jail in like, I think 19 countries, and in the U.S. you'll be fired from pretty much everywhere. So they say it's the most documented event in history, but you can't question it.
And we see that in real time, right? So like as an example, immediately after October the 7th, in Harvard, I believe it's Harvard University, there were students who came out and they wrote a letter saying that we support the Palestinian resistance. What did they do? Bill Ackman, who again is another Jew, a billionaire, as well as many others, tried to dox them, destroyed their lives, made sure that they didn't get work opportunities. Apparently one of them even had an offer in one of the most prestigious law firms in America. That was rescinded, so they lost everything just for saying that they support the resistance and they're against the genocide.
No, they showed the power they have. Like, we don't control things, but we're going to get you fired, doxxed. They also got the didn't they get the I think the principal fired or the dean fired, I believe.
Yeah, and she was and again, people from the pro-Palestinian people were actually against the dean because they were saying that, look, he's been too harsh. He's not allowing the protests. And what did they do? Yeah, they got the dean fired in various universities and then replaced it with a Jewish guy. So like,
I think someone said it was like 7 out of the 8 deans, I think, are Jewish.
Again, extremely disproportionate. And the example was that one, that the dean was removed. The dean recently from Columbia University, who was a Christian Egyptian person, again, she was removed. So again, like, I'm replaced with who? With, again, Christians, with Jews.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But we'll wrap up in a second. But before I came here, I was looking at Twitter and saw videos of like IDF soldiers, and they were like, pissing on a body, stuff like that. We've seen so many of these videos of guys playing with underwear, like desecrating bodies, literally sodomizing people on video. Like America, we've had a little bit of shameful. This happened a few times. There was the prisoners happened a few times, but when that happened, it was a major scandal here. People were not fired, thrown in jail. We cracked down on it instantly. Like if an American soldier posted posing with a dead body, that person would be arrested, court-martialed. It would be a big deal. Yeah. But we see this with the IDF constantly. I've never seen any other army behave that way. I'm sure the British Army, you never seen posts of British soldiers holding like bodies and pissing on them and stuff, right? It would be a huge ordeal. I just think it's baffling that our media and our government completely ignores the IDF doing that to dead bodies. It's like, what do you make of all that? I'm sure you've seen some of these videos, right?
So what you said is so accurate and such a golden point, because if you look at, and it shows the difference in civilizations and cultures, right? Because as you said, you gave the example of America. In the UK, we had the same thing. In the UK, there was a major scandal.
Yeah, it was a big deal, right? People
Yeah.
were like, wow, this is disgusting. Instantly called it out.
Yeah, for example, Piers Morgan, who I dislike in the sense of I disagree with almost a huge amount of his issues. But one of the things he did was he exposed the actions of the British soldiers in Iraq.
Yeah.
Now he used, like they say, claimed that he used fake pictures and he also tapped phones, but in reality it was happening and he exposed it. And that was a huge scandal in the UK that there were soldiers who even did that, right? And as you said, they were disciplined.
No one was probably defending it, right? There was no British people having riots to get him out of jail.
It was the biggest expose, and it was like considered horrific, right? And then compare that to, like, as you said, British culture, American culture, where we find this despicable.
Yeah, we've done some shameful things,
Yeah.
but we've disciplined the guys, jailed them, imprisoned them. The people were disgusted. No one defended
The
it.
acts of the individual were basically reprimanded and they were exposed and they were punished. Whereas in this society, the people were protesting for the right to rape. They were protesting that we want to commit these horrific crimes, and it was a huge proportion of Israeli society that were doing it. That tells you that this society, that when they're basically perpetuating this ideology, when it's become basically the sanctuary for rape, it's become the sanctuary for pedophilia, it's become the sanctuary for a lot of these things, that what does it say about that society? It says a lot about them, that basically they're quite demonic in their ideology, they're quite horrific, they don't have the same Western ideals. And as you said, when our societies are defending that, what that does is it delegitimizes our society, because the world does see America as the moral police. And so when you're basically, what you're doing now is you're destroying yourself in terms of that morality. So now later in the future, let's say there's another country, let's say China invades Taiwan, you're going to have no kind of moral compass.
If they're in there raping their prisoners, we can't be like, don't do that when we didn't say anything. We gave Israel more money when they did.
Exactly.
And one of the guys that was caught on camera raping a man, sodomizing him, absolutely disgusting. He's doing talk shows now. So he's being treated like a hero. I saw him on a talk show this morning. Like, first he came on with a mask on a talk show. Now he has his mask off, all like proud, and people are supporting him. And obviously not everyone there. There are people that are against it. But the fact that this is mainstream, he's going on talk shows. They had a riot to get these guys out of jail when they were arrested. Like, I think it was 9 or 10 guys, you know, were torturing and sodomizing a male prisoner. And they've done it to lots of them. This was caught on camera is why they're arrested. They've all been released. It just shows something's off. And our politicians won't call it out. I think it's probably the same in Britain, right? Where your politicians call these people out.
Yeah, so we have the same problem. So you know, like how you've got APAC, where APAC controls British
our
politics.
Yeah.
We have the exact same thing. We have Labour Friends of Israel and Conservative Friends of Israel. And so again, these control the politicians. Our politicians are just cheaper than yours. They pay your ones a lot more. Our ones get paid a lot less, right? But yeah, they're vehemently controlled. And so therefore, any opposition against Israel, you end up losing your place, you end up losing your whip, or you end up losing your seat. And in addition to that, you only get seats or you only get pushed when you're basically supported by Zionists.
Yeah, they're so organized. They win almost all their elections. AIPAC's like openly gloating on Twitter that they won their last like 300 races or something. This is like clear foreign interference, and everyone's just quiet and takes it.
So as an example, in the UK, George Galloway was against the Zionist regime. He ended up winning his seat. Then they made sure that he lost his seat. So he didn't get again his seat. Then someone like Nigel Farage, somehow they made sure that the guy that he was standing against dropped out and wasn't, he didn't drop out, but he was no longer basically canvassing. So again, they make sure that they get their people where they want.
Yeah, it's not just money. They're super organized. They know how to get people elected. And it's not just AIPAC. There's also donations. Like, you know, Trump got $100 million from, what is it, Alderson or whatever. So they have also massive, and that person's not, they say he's an American citizen, but it's a dual citizen that's very, very clear they're loyal to Israel, not America. You know, she served in the IDF. Her husband flew traitor Jonathan Pollard straight to Israel for a hero's welcome. It's like these people are not Americans.
I agree. So I hold the position that basically dual citizens should not be able to hold office in America because they have dual loyalty. They have loyalty to America and they have loyalty to Israel. But in addition to that, I hold the position that actually anyone who has the right to return, what the right to return is basically that anyone who is Jewish automatically has the supremacist right to basically return to Israel, even if they've got no family from Israel. Their parents, their grandparents, nobody was from Israel. They have the right. Remember, Palestinians, there's 15 million Palestinians who've been removed from Palestine who don't have the right to go there, even though their parents and their grandparents are from Palestine. And yet these Jewish people automatically have the right. Now, the problem with this is that you could have someone, a Jewish person, let me just give you an example, like someone like Laura Loomer, who can basically, hasn't got dual citizenship. She has the right to return. She means she can go to US, destroy the US, destroy their politics, make sure that they basically do everything for Israel, And then after destroying it, when they get to like 50, 60, they can go back and get the right to return. So I say anybody who's got the right to return, anybody who's got dual citizenship should not be able to hold office in the United States.
Yeah, I would have thought that was crazy a year ago probably, but I think seeing the effects, it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, and then people may say, look, you're being anti-Semitic because then basically you're saying Jewish people should not be able to hold office. Well, it's a very simple way of stopping that. You stop Israel from having this.
Change the laws.
the
Exactly.
law,
That's what I was
so they
thinking
don't have
too.
the supremacist
They could
law.
change the laws. They can't do that. It gives these people a way out. People do crimes too. There's been cases, they molest a kid, they just go to Israel, escape. They still give them dual citizenship, or they give them citizenship, and they very, very rarely will send anyone back.
Yeah, it's very rare that they send them back because they probably won't ask them what they'll do. They'll escape to Israel before they get charged. So then they'll be like, oh, they never got charged, therefore they've escaped to Israel. There's happened to well-known people, both for, like, as you said, paedophilic crimes, even rape crimes. But in addition to that, there was people, what was that? There was that crypto thing. What was it?
Oh, is the FTX one or a different one?
There was FTX, but there's another one where there was an Israeli guy. He basically scammed people of loads of money, and then he went to
there.
Israel. So again, there's like, so it's become a sanctuary for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, if you had dual citizenship, you can understand why, and they'll take you in, open arms. Guys like, if you're spying on the U.S. trader, they fly him back, give a hero's welcome. This guy should have been executed. He's selling the biggest U.S. spies, but he goes over there. They probably give him a bunch of money, treat him like a hero. So you can see why people, I'll be loyal to this country.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be in the government if you have dual loyalty, and that goes to any dual citizen, I would say.
Yeah,
you should have to give up your other citizenship.
Yeah, 100%. So even if like Ilhan Omar's got dual citizenship with Somalia, it's the same with her. So it should be same with everyone.
No, I agree. I think she's not America first. She represents her country. If you're an American politician, you should represent America. And unfortunately, most of our politicians don't seem that way.
Yeah, I agree. And most of them is.
Yeah. So anything before we wrap up you want to discuss or where to find you? Or
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, obviously. But other than that, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
You got Rumble on YouTube yet or no, or not yet?
Well, I did start them, but I didn't do them properly. But I think once I'm going to restart my YouTube show in about 6 weeks' time.
Cool. Well, great having you.